What's up, y'all? What's going on, y'all? This is your host, Jared from the Lagniappe Legends podcast, giving what you need in news and interviews. What's going on? It's been a minute. Took a couple weeks off to get the new guests, new lineup coming on. So, no further ado, let me introduce our next guest for episode 91 is Dr. Byron Jasper. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, good brother. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the actual invitation. Excited. So love what you're doing. Thank you. Can't say it enough.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show, sir. All right, man. So let's get right into it. So please tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So try to give you the condensed version because it could go a little long. Originally from Houma, Louisiana, and went to undergrad at Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans, and then did my medical school training at Tulane, got my master's at Tulane, residency in Baton Rouge and family medicine, left and went to DC for 2 years and did 2 fellowships, one in HIV and hepatitis C medicine in primary care, and another one in something called community health leadership development, which is basically public health focused. Came back, started working, and eventually opened my own direct primary care practice, which was the first Black-owned direct primary care practice in the state of Louisiana, which is a huge deal, of course. And then from there, slowly but surely doing a bunch of other stuff. But that's the condensed version, so I'll leave it there. Hopefully that hit all the high points.
Yeah, you hit all the high. That was great. You broke that down less than a minute.
Right. I get practice on it enough. After a while, you get to the point where you're like, take that out. Just say this, right?
All right. So what made you choose medicine as a career path? Because, a lot of people, where we come from, they do sports, technology, engineering, the usual. Yeah. Why you chose the medical profession?
Yeah, I like medicine because of the idea. I think most people who go into medicine do it because they want to help people. On top of that, I thought the other part for me was more so it was always like a puzzle, right? And I tell people that I take care of a lot of sick people. And it's not that they're any sicker than other people, but a lot of people, I have HIV patients, I have patients with hepatitis C, patients with a lot of chronic illnesses. And the short version of it is that it's really complex. And if it's complex, it's like a puzzle to me. And I like solving puzzles, not because I like sitting down and actually doing puzzles, but I look at it as if it's a tricky type of situation, trying to figure out who's who, what's what. For me, I think it's a challenge. And if I can figure out a challenge, I really like it. So, that whole mindset of taking care of people plus the puzzle piece, I think, you can't beat it. That's really what it comes down to, helping people and having that complex medical care, medical question, and getting to solve it. I think it's just beautiful.
Okay. All right, cool. All right. So can you explain to people the process of becoming a medical physician? A lot of people are unaware of how much time, money, and sacrifice that
don't talk about the money. I'm still hurting. The way these loans set up.
The student loans, my God.
Yeah, and a lot of people may not know how we are roughly connected, right? Like your wife and I were in the same medical school class, which is really funny because it's a very small world out there, and no idea how small the world is until you start running into people and having 2 and 3 degrees of separation. But to get back to the question, yeah. So let's just say after high school, it is a very still tedious and long process. So 4 years of undergrad, usually. From the 4 years of undergrad, you then do 4 years of medical school. And then from 4 years of medical school, you go into a residency. And the residency, the shortest one is 3 years. And then there are others that are longer, some are 4 years, some are 5 years. And then if you do fellowship training, which is subspecialty training, meaning you choose a career in a certain field. And then from that field, you go in and say, okay, I'm going to specialize in something. You add another year, 2, 3, 4 years on it. So for me, my total training after high school was roughly 11 years. So 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, 3 years of residency. Then I added 2 more years on because I did 2 more fellowships. So for me, it was 13 years of school after high school. So after 12 years of school, I did 13 more, if that makes sense. When you say it like that, all of a sudden people are like, God. At that point, I was just like, yeah, it kind of is it's a wake up call when you say why are doctors oftentimes the way they are. I mean, we went to a lot of school. We put in a lot of hours. We paid a lot of dues. And if you don't realize what that means, think about 13 years of learning a subject, right? And that subject gets obviously, narrowed down to something specific, but 13 years of learning something. It's not a fluke that the doctors are so very well trained and so very competent, specifically in our country, because it's a lot of training, it's a lot of schooling, it's a lot of small details that we end up basically hammering home, a lot of on the job training, a lot of, residency, like the list goes on and on of all the stuff we do. And then after all the training, you still have to keep learning. You have to keep learning, because I tell people, you don't want a doctor who got their degree back in 1960 and they don't learn anything new after 1960, right? You want someone who's constantly training, who constantly does that. And the other thing that I learned is that a lot of docs often should go to medical conferences, should get more training, should continue to foster that education. Some don't. And that's a whole nother conversation. But the idea is that for me, I'm always trying to learn. I'm actually going to at least 2 conferences this year for the sole purpose of learning more stuff so I can teach and train and do more things, take care of patients a lot better, because I'm constantly learning. So 13 years plus a lot more.
Right.
Right.
So can you elaborate on the because since it's I think this is the time, I think I've seen a couple of people who matched with their program. Can you talk about the residency program? Because a lot of people, like, I didn't know anything about this until I was, dating my wife at the time.
Yeah.
How you go to match day, how you have to go interview with different programs.
Right.
Talk about the residency process.
Yeah. So the med school process is pretty straightforward. You interview at a bunch of places. When you interview, you get accepted in the school. You go to the school of your choice. The match is a lot different. After medical school, toward the very end, you start interviewing for residency positions. And what that means is that you basically go to all the places you would like to train within whatever field it is: family medicine, OBGYN, internal medicine, surgery, whatever your field is. You start interviewing at the end of your medical school career. And then when it comes down to you interviewing at 10, 15, 20, whatever number of places you interview, you have to make a list of what are your top choices. Let's assume that you interviewed at 20 places. You then make a list of the top 10 you want to go to. So the way that the match works is that same program has to rank you in the top whatever number of slots they have. So if they have 10 slots and you have 10 programs, if you all rank each other at the same number of slots, you match and go to that program. If you do not rank them in a certain way, or they rank other people ahead of you and those other people rank that program and match, you basically don't match with that program. So if program A has 12 slots and you're ranked number 13, but the other 12 people they ranked before them all pick that same program, you don't match at the program. And it's unfortunate, because some programs are really good and you really want to go to those programs, but if you don't match, you can't. And then there are not enough programs in the country to take everybody, which makes no sense, whole nother conversation. But the idea is that when the match happens, some people match and they match successfully. They do their residency for 3, 4, or 5 years. Some people don't, and then they have to do a bunch of stuff to try to find a place to get trained to be a resident. And it's really grueling. It's one of those things where it's competitive. It doesn't have to be, in my opinion, but it's stuff that happens. And then if you make it, you make it. And it means a whole lot, because that training is really hard to come by.
Right, exactly. Because I remember my wife match to where she go from residency. It was a really emotional experience. Yeah. I don't think I have the video. I might have to post it. She probably get mad. But like, people crying, people excited. Some people get to go to places that they thought they would go. So it's really cool experience. Residency. Man, I wasn't even a physician, and I felt the pain because when my wife started residency, especially the intern year, your first year medicine, you working crazy shifts. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think crazy is a nice way to put it, right? Like, crazy is an understatement. The amount that a resident is paid and the amount of work they do is less than minimum wage, like, easily, right?
Yes.
It's a constant grind, right? Like, I'm talking about, and it depends on your field. So let's put that into perspective. Certain fields are not built the same, right? Like I did family medicine and I know I had a rough residency. And family medicine is probably one of the easier residencies to go into because we're mostly outpatient. And basically when you're outpatient, the clinic closes, and theoretically when the clinic closes, you're off. If you work in a hospital, the hospitals don't close, so you're working almost all the time, and your shifts can be a lot more grueling because you're always in the hospital. Now, family medicine, we do a lot of hospital stuff too. A lot of people don't realize that. They think you're a family medicine doc, you work in an outpatient clinic, and that's all you do. They don't realize that you really work in the hospital and get trained in a lot of different things. Certain fields focus in one field. You focus on this type of field and that's it. We do a lot of everything, right? We're like the jack of all trades, if you will. So at that point, the idea of your residency is wake up, go see patients, go see patients, go see patients, go home, study, 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 wake up, go see patients, and do it all over again. And then sometimes it gets reversed. You wake up and study because you're on the night shift, and then you have to go see patients in the middle of the night. And then you get off in the morning, you sleep, then you wake up, you study. It's crazy because your schedule changes month to month. You literally do something for a month, and then you move to something else. You do something for a month and you move to something else. Sometimes it's 2 months, sometimes it's 6 weeks, but the most part is 1 month at a time of training in a specific field, and then you move to something else. And the worst part about that is when you feel comfortable and you finally start to get it, you shift to something else. But the good news is that you get really good at doing so many different things within that field. You start to see how smart and how talented these doctors become, how well versed they are at adapting to strange situations. And that's part of the reason why when you find a really good doctor, I tell people you need to keep them, because it's hard to sometimes figure that out, that this person is good and they've earned those stripes because they put in the work. They've been able to adapt to very, very tough situations. They've been able to retain a lot of information where a lot of people couldn't, right? Like you have to go through, hell and high water just to get to residency. Then you have to go through hell and high water on 10 to get through residency. So at that point, the idea is that everybody's in residency, right? Like as you just alluded to, it wasn't just her. You were in residency. The extended family's in residency. Everybody's in residency. Like I remember nights where I would be so exhausted that people would just bring me food. Like it was just like,
oh
I would
yeah,
wake up.
yes, yes, I did. Oh God! I got food for her.
Right.
Working with, yeah.
I mean, I was on call and people would send food to the hospital. It was just that bad. Like, it was to the point where people were like, we have no idea what to do, so we just give you food. Like, it's just trying to help that person get over the hump. And those little small gestures mean a whole lot. It gives you a lot more motivation to know people are with you and they're going through it with you and you're going to succeed. And when it comes to Black and brown people going through residency, I mean, again, often we don't have the 3, 4, 5 generations of doctors in our family that are going to be able to tell you what to do. So you're learning how to do it. And I tell people, we call it the school of the hard knocks, right? Like you learn from trial and error. You don't learn because someone taught you. You learn because you did it and it didn't go well. And you're like, I ain't doing that again. So imagine doing that through medical school. Imagine doing that through residency and still trying to be successful and still trying to maintain relationships and trying to raise children. Like it's just really difficult to do, and people don't see that. So it's funny when you hear the people say, well, those doctors, especially the Black doctors or the brown doctors, have this attitude. And I tell people, I'm at a point now where I tell people what I think very plainly. I'll say, hey, we got attitude because I earned my stripes, right? Like you get this degree. I mean, you could take the paper all you want. I know what I got, right? Like I know I earned mine. Like they gonna have to drag me out of here before they say you don't have this. You know what I mean? So all of that, it really means a lot to see someone get into medical school that looks like us, then get into residency, then finish residency. Like it is a huge achievement after they put in all this work, because they are doing it oftentimes on their own, of course with help, but not with the generational help, if you will. And all of that being said, turns into a big momentous occasion when it's all said and done.
Right. You said something real true there, because I think everyone who is a person of color that my wife knows, I think they're all first generation physicians. They all of them are, yeah. All of them are first generation, yeah.
And and again, I'm very transparent about my story, and I have no problem sharing this. So your wife and I started in med school in the same class, but we didn't finish in the same class because I had a bunch of struggles that I had to go through and learn the hard way. And I ended up finishing a year after her. But it's one of those things where a lot of people will say, oh, you got into med school and you graduated, it was fun. Look, there was a point where there was not going to be a Dr. Jasper because it was that tough. It was that much of a grind, that much of a struggle, and I had to literally figure it out. And luckily enough, I had a mentor come into my life who literally explained to me, we have a test called Step 1, and Step 1 is the test that you take between your second year of med school usually and your third year. It's the test that kind of determines what you're going to do when you graduate. And Step 1 is expensive, and it's long, and it's hard. It's about an 8-hour exam, and you usually only get one shot at it depending on where you go. I tell people all the time, again, I'm comfortable with my story. I failed Step 1 3 times. 3. The third time after I failed Step 1, they put me on academic probation. And they basically told me I had one more time to take it. If I failed, I was getting put out. Straight up telling me, if you don't pass,
no matter what kind of grades you got,
it didn't matter. It didn't matter. If you can't pass Step 1, you can't get quote unquote board certification. You can't graduate and all this other stuff. So again, whole nother story. We can go into all of those little small details. But my story is that I tell people, if I got through med school, anybody can do it if you have the right mindset and you have the idea that you want this. Now, you got to make a lot of sacrifices. I had to literally change a lot of studying that I was doing. I had to reinvent what I was doing because my study habits were backwards. I was doing more reading and trying to retain the material, and I wasn't doing a lot of questions. And the thing that I learned in med school is that the way you learn if you know stuff is you have to do a ton of questions, right? If you ask you the questions over and over and over again, eventually you start to retain them because you've seen the question 17 times. Eventually you're going to learn the answer. I never was doing that. I actually was just studying and reading books and looking at charts and reading graphs, and it didn't stick because when I would see the question, they would ask it one way, and then on the test they would ask it 3 different ways. And I've only saw it one way, of course, wouldn't get the answer right. So after the third time of me not passing, I was on academic probation, and I had to literally put up or shut up. If I did not pass, I was getting put out of school. And at that point, when you're in the second year of med school, it ain't free, right? I was already 6 figures in debt from med school for 2 years, and I still was going to have to carry that debt without being a doctor. Imagine that pressure, right? Imagine the pressure of being in this actual very highly competitive field. You've already failed 3 times, so your confidence is low. You don't want to tell anybody you failed, so you're embarrassed. You don't want to talk about it. And you're literally just trying to navigate because I didn't have anybody I could talk to. I couldn't call my family and be like, hey, you know what? I'm failing out of med school. What's going on with y'all, right? I had to literally figure out how to navigate. And funny enough, I had a Black male physician who was in my actual med school training, if you will. And again, remember I tell you, it's just funny that, and I'm definitely a believer in God and all of the things that come with it. He will not put anything on you that you can't bear. And I say that because I literally was going through it. And I talked to this guy, worked with him every day, knew him from, he was actually my frat brother. And he was teaching me and all that. And I told him what was going on. For some reason, I just told him. And he said, Byron, I have no doubt that you know how to do this. None. I've seen you in clinic. You have excellent bedside manner. You know the material. Your problem is you just don't know how to take the test. And hit me like a ton of bricks. What they say, they read you, read you right. Like he had the whole thing figured out. He was like, you just don't know how to take the test. He said, you are sitting here and you can answer every question I ask you. You can take care of any patient that comes in this clinic. You just don't know how to take the test. So you have to learn how to take the test. And when he sat me down and explained to me what I was doing wrong, when I tell you the floodgates opened up, it literally just changed everything. Like at that point, if I already had an attitude about how good I was, like you can imagine that what they like, why they done showed me this, right? So at this point, it turned into me saying, I know I belong here. You've heard people probably talk about imposter syndrome, where you're in the class and you're like, I don't know if I should be here. I'm in over my head. That's real, because I was doing it for 2 years. I literally was just getting by, right? I didn't understand what I didn't understand. And then when I figured it out, at that point, I was unstoppable, because I had the keys that other people had potentially had, right? I had the mentor, I had all of that. And then at that point, I didn't have really any trouble at all. Now, I still have times where I make mistakes. I still have times where I forget things. I still have times where I miss questions. But it changes you when you have the experience of a mentor. It changes you when you have people around you that look like you, that are able to help you navigate. And it changes whenever you literally make it to that next level that, in my opinion, you should reach back and help other people, because you know what it's like to be helped. You want to do the same. And that's part of the reason why I do a lot of the stuff I do. I have the messages that I have, and I have a lot of students that I work with. I have my own nonprofit focused on getting more minorities into the medical field, which is a whole nother thing. And that came from those experiences that I lived and I have, and all this together says, look, any of us can do this. It's a lot of school. It's expensive. It's a huge grind. Everybody's in the family who's, everybody's a resident at the same time, if you know what I mean. But when you do it, it literally just changes generations, right? Like I know my family is going to be straight now that I've made it. And I'm the first and only in my family to do that. But I already know that there are going to be more after me because I had to climb that mountaintop. And I know now that I have the keys to the city, I can give it to whoever else I want.
That's what's up. I like that right there. Yeah, that's a true statement right there. Everything that you said. All right, man, you said a lot right there. I think you answered some of my questions.
Right.
Okay, so you graduate from medical school, graduate from residency. So what do you do after that once you get out of residency?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I did 2 years of fellowship. So I'm in residency, I'm grinding. Mind you, the med school challenge was before residency. So I get to residency and it's 3 years of family medicine, Baton Rouge. And up until that point, I'm all Louisiana, right? Louisiana for high school, Louisiana for undergrad, Louisiana for med school, Louisiana for residency. So I'm thinking, I know everything, right?
Right.
Go to DC, mind blown, right? Like blown, not in the never seen anything like this before, but definitely never been around as many people of color who are in these high powered positions, right? You walk in the hospital in Baton Rouge as a Black male, and it's probably like 7 of us. We know each other, right? You walk in the hospital in DC, and it's like 800 of you, right? So at that point, you have to literally be definitely a student, but you also are proud that you say, you know what? There should be more of us. There should be more of that. And I just started getting certain things that I just couldn't learn here. And it's not because other people, in essence, can't teach it to you, but if they don't know, how can they teach you something they don't know, right? So the people I'm learning from didn't know a lot of the stuff that I wanted to learn. So I had to leave and go learn it. And I came back. And after I came back, I'm doing a lot more stuff in the area than a lot of people probably know and probably can know, because how can you learn something if you don't really go anywhere and you don't go, you don't become a student outside of the 4 walls of that institution. It's tough because if your teacher only knows one way to teach something, it's hard for you to learn the other 3 ways it can get done. So those 2 years of residency really shaped a lot of my mindset of how to help people beyond what I thought I knew in the actual training within the actual state of Louisiana, and I'm grateful for going up there because it definitely just gave me more experiences. But overall, it really gave me the idea that, there's more than one way to do this. And the other ways that you can do it may actually be groundbreaking if you go back to Louisiana and do it. And that's what I ended up coming back to do. I started the nonprofit. It wasn't a nonprofit at the time in DC. I learned how to do that in DC, and then I came back and I started doing it. And then we're now in DC and in Louisiana. A lot of the HIV stuff I learned in DC, and now I'm coming back and doing that in Louisiana. So I think the 2 years of fellowship really helped to polish a lot of the things that I thought I knew, and also gave me ways to do it in a different way. And I will also say it also solidified how good I was. And that's funny. People, would say, what do you mean? I went into my first fellowship, which was the public health fellowship, and I was what you call a junior faculty. Junior faculty means that you're not quite a full-fledged doctor that is a boss and you're doing everything. You're kind of right underneath being a boss, if you will. So I still had residents that reported to me, but I still had people above me. So all of that being said, I was kind of in between. And the residents who were learning from me were amazed at how much stuff I could do with less. Because if you don't know anything about healthcare and politics and policy, in DC, a lot of stuff is covered by Medicaid. Medicaid covers a lot of stuff. So in Louisiana, it's not quite the same. So in Louisiana, I had to learn how to do more with less. So when I got to DC and everything was covered by Medicaid, I was like, this is easy, right? Like people were looking at me like, how can you do that without knowing blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, well, in Louisiana, we kind of had to learn that. So those 2 experiences helped because 1, you learn how to operate with less. 1, you learn how to operate with more, and then you put them together. And now, like I said, I feel like we operate on another level in my own clinic because at this point, no one has the training that I have in a very specific way. And that's not to say there's no other good doctors. It's just I know that Black male physician who has the amount of training I have and the experience I have it's relatively unmatched, and I'm happy about that. And I wear it proudly, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. That's good. Like a lot of people I was just, my wife, she stayed in Louisiana. Well, I'm sorry. She did undergrad in Howard University in
hmm
DC.
hmm
And I work for the government. So I've been to DC a few times, and like when you go to DC, your mind will be blown away coming from New Orleans. Like
Absolutely.
every people, I mean, I'm talking about any
Everything.
you go to, you're gonna see somebody, people of color in charge or in power.
hmm
So it's
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Yeah, and it's a cultural melting pot. But I think
Yes.
one other part is that it also gives you an idea that you can do more. Like if you come from a place and you don't see, as they say, representation matters. If you don't see other people doing certain things, you don't think you can do it, right? And it's weird because we're at a point now, we're so educated, we know we can do whatever we want. But think about when you're 16 years old, you don't think you can own stuff. You know you can work in it, but owning it, what is an owner, right? I don't know what that is. And then you go to DC and there's all these people calling shots. You're like, well, I can do that too. I'm just as smart, if not smarter than X, Y, and Z. So why can't I do it? So it's really definitely an affirmation to have that trip. And I've actually was happy because my parents, who I'm very close to, actually came and stayed with me in DC for a time. And they were blown away, right? Like, and they're both from Louisiana, right? And they both have limited experience potentially going to these places, but it just gives you a different energy. And I always encourage my students and my residents and anybody I'm teaching, go into these conferences and go and be around other people so you can start to soak up what it's like to be around these different minds and different cultures. And it just changes you, and it hopefully will change you for the better, because if you stay in that same spot, that's who you're going to be, right? You're not going to get better, in my opinion. You're going to just solidify who you are at that moment. But if you want to get better, you got to get more experience.
Exactly. That's
hmm
why I'm hopefully when my kids get of age, if they decide to go to college, because college is so high and
Yeah.
technology is changing how you learn.
hmm hmm
But if they do, I want them to go away. Like I
hmm
don't want them to stay in Louisiana. I don't want them to go away to see how the
hmm
rest of the world is.
Yeah.
Because if I don't went to DC, I'll be way
Right.
where I am now.
Right. It'll change your mind if you'd have possibly got those experiences
Yes,
earlier. And
yes.
it's going to make a difference, obviously. And I know y'all are going to take good care of those kids. But I will say, I know it's also helpful when you have two good parents who have a lot of experience from different backgrounds.
Mhm.
Even better. It's like way more for them to pick off of. So I think that's great.
All right. So you finish your fellowship. Um, let's talk about what happens after that. You decide to come back home.
Yeah.
What did you do after that?
So I will say the 2 to 3 years after fellowship, it's roughly four, I'll say. So it was 1 year I worked at something called an FQHC, a federally qualified health center. Federally qualified health center, an FQHC, is basically taking care of the underserved. I have an affinity for taking care of the underserved. I always took care of the underserved, Medicaid, no insurance. That's who I take care of because I mean, I know what it's like to be those people, right? I have family that are those people. At one point, I was those people as well. So I know how it is to take care of people that often look like us. And I've worked there for a year. And long story short, in essence, decided that it was time for a change. I love teaching as well. And I do a lot of teaching. I work with a lot of students. So I ended up moving from the FQHC into a residency where I did a lot of training of actual doctors who are coming out of med school. I did that for 3 years. And at that point, I said, you know what? I still don't feel like I'm getting all of what I want. And what does that mean? I am an entrepreneur at heart. I am a person who needs to be in charge, not because I feel like I'm better than other people, but for me, I told you I like puzzles, I like challenges, and I like solving things. And if I feel like I can do it better than other people, why sit in their company and their corporation doing their stuff when I can do it myself and I can actually possibly do it better? So I ended up leaving the residency after 3 years. And that was 3 years. So it was 1 year of FQHC work, 3 years of being a faculty member. And then I literally left in 2020 and started my own practice. And at that point, I'm the boss, I'm in charge, and it falls on me, which is a good thing, but it's also
It's also a bad thing.
it's also a bad thing, right? Like if you don't do it, it don't get done. If you don't pay the bill, it doesn't get paid. If you're not working, you're not eating. But I figured out that I feel way better about what it is to be an owner. I feel way better about what it is to be able to provide stuff for people in the way where I don't have all the red tape. And the model that we use, direct primary care model, if people don't know, it's what we call, I tell people it's like a gym membership or it's like Netflix. You basically pay us directly. regardless of what insurance you have. And when you pay us directly, you can use our services as much as you want for that one payment. And by doing that, it opens up the door for people to get care, regardless if they have insurance or not. It opens up the door for people to get care if they lose their insurance. And I've had people call me and say, I lost my job, I don't have insurance. What are you going to do, Dr. Jasper? I'm like, nothing. You're going to see me next week, right? Like, it didn't change because your insurance is gone. Because I don't like taking care of people because of their insurance. I like taking care of people because of them. And if they have insurance, it's a bonus, because remember, I trained for years taking care of people with no insurance or very little insurance. So doing this is easy to me, right? I had another person call me because one of the doctors in the direct primary care field in Baton Rouge, where I'm actually located, he closed up shop, right? He said, he's moving back to wherever he was headed to, and they're needing a new doctor. And one of the patients called me and said, I can't find a doctor who does direct primary care because I have Medicaid. And, I'm hoping you take Medicaid and so on and so forth. And I said, well, we don't really take Medicaid because you pay us directly, but we use it all the time. And a lot of my patients have the ability to see me regardless of what their insurance is. And she was blown away. She was like, I was thinking that the doctor who left was the only one that did it. And, she was saying, in her opinion, she's like, I think you're actually doing better than what he was doing. And I started laughing because it's just funny when people are refreshed to see someone take care of them in a way where they deserve to be taken care of regardless of their insurance, right? If you talk to a lot of Medicaid patients, you will hear them say they don't get good quality care because they have Medicaid. And unfortunately, that's true. And I don't really care about that. I care about the people so much that I'm going to basically go above and beyond to take care of them. And if I do it well enough, then the rest is going to take care of itself.
Right. Because I remember when we first time we met and we was talking, and then you
Mm-hmm.
told me about the way patients pay you. I was blown away. I was like, I never heard of that before.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I like that. I like the way it's handled.
Yeah.
So you talked about being your own boss and
Mm-hmm.
running your own crew, your own schedule and stuff like that. Can you talk about the do's and don'ts of running your own practice? If somebody who's similar to you, a physician, want to go out, branch out on your own, what are some of the do's and don'ts?
So I will say you have to be able to multitask, but not to the point where you get off track. You have to also be focused and locked in on what your goal is. And you have to also be addicted to results. And people always say, well, wait, what do you mean by that? If you just do a lot of stuff and you don't actually measure what you're doing, then you're just doing a lot of stuff, right? If you want to know if something's good, you got to measure and got to see what your results are. So if you're addicted to results, you can multitask, but you also have a huge focus on your ultimate goal. Being a business owner, being a owner of your own practice is possible. But I also learned that everybody don't want to do that, right? Like, I actually talked to a few doctors and told them, yeah, man, you should consider doing this, or, you all should consider this. And one guy literally told me, I don't want to do that. He's like, I just want to go and see patients and get my check and go home. I started laughing because to me, I was shocked. I was like, man, I would have never thought that was a thing. Like, I thought people often want to be their own boss, and some people don't. So it's not for everybody. But I do know that when I do it and I do it my way, I feel better about myself. I feel better about how patients are receiving care. I feel like if my family were doing the same thing where they got really good care and they were going to a person that really liked, I would be happy, right? So I feel like I'm going to put more blood, sweat, and tears into my own business than I would in someone else's. And if I do it well enough, I can do that with a lot of our people, whether they're working with me, they're working for me, or they're coming to see me. And if I continue to grow and do what I'm planning on doing, it shouldn't be any reason why there won't be multiple clinics with that name on it in multiple cities or multiple states. That's just how my mind works. That's just how big that I envision things going. And it's not because I can't do it. It's just because I have to sometimes calm myself down, if you know what I mean. Like, I be like, I'm going to do all this. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, hold on, let's slow down a little bit. So it's possible. It's not difficult in my opinion. It's just you have to want it and you have to be built a certain way. And that's not everybody.
Right. I agree with that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some don'ts you recommend?
Mm-hmm.
Some don'ts.
I would say if you're trying to open your own practice, don't feel like you got to do everything yourself. That's something that we often do. I've talked to plenty of people now that I'm a business owner, whether it's through my patients or whether it's just contacts. There's a difference between owning the business and being the business. And that's something I had to learn. Being the business is when you don't do something, it doesn't get done. Owning the business is I don't have to do it, somebody else is, and I'm going to get the results. And if you don't know the difference, think about where you work if you're a person who works for someone else. Your job is to make sure the owner is actually taken care of. Your job is to make sure the owner's company is running efficiently. Eventually, those owners' results are tied to you as the worker, but they don't have to show up and do your job because they're the owner. So there's a difference between owning a business and being the business. And that's one of the don'ts that I tell people. When you want to own the business, you have to start to find a way to separate yourself from the smaller tasks that you don't have to do, whether it's answering the phones, writing emails, whether it's doing your social media. Like, you have to find a way to get those processes out of your hands and into someone else's so you can own the business. So that's one of the biggest don'ts. And I think the other thing is, don't get upset if it doesn't work out on the first try or the second try or the third try. I've read a lot of books, and I've heard people say you cannot be a billionaire without losing money. And a lot of people don't think that, right? Well, if I do this, I'm gonna lose money. Well, I'm pretty sure that if you play sports, you've lost the game, but you still won the championship, tells me that there's a possibility that if you lose, you can still win. So not being afraid to fail is one of the things that's a do but a don't, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if I'm saying it the best way, but I think I'm trying to put it in terms of not overworking yourself by doing everything, but also not being afraid to fail. Those are the two things that I learned. And I know that even if I make a mistake, even if it doesn't go well, I'm still going to win because I know what I'm capable of. And I know that I'm not the only one that's made a mistake, but I know that I'm going to be someone who's going to be successful. So those are the two biggest things I'll tell people don't do. And if they don't do those things, they'll be fine.
Right. That's some huge gems right there, people. I need to, man, that's good right there. I'm gonna have to snippet that because that was some good information. Because a lot of people, when you try to run a business, they don't think about, if I fail, it's gonna be all in all. Of course, people make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. So we just learn from them.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's talk about what are some technologies that you utilize to run your business? Since you're a startup, you started on your own, you expanded now. So what technology do you use to help run your practice?
Yeah, I think the most basic thing that everybody knows is, we use what we call an EMR, electronic medical record. That's where we keep our patient records. That's where we send our emails and some prescriptions from. That's where we order our labs, and we do a lot of our prescriptions in a very basic way. I say that because people don't realize that in certain states, Louisiana being one, that doctors, specifically physicians, have the ability to not only write prescriptions, but they also can dispense prescriptions if they so choose. So in my practice, I actually do both. If I have a patient who can't afford medication, or their pharmacy does not cover their medication in full with their insurance and they have to pay out of pocket, they can come to me and we can do a price comparison. And if my stuff is cheaper, then I basically write the prescription. I go into the actual room next door. I count the pills, I put the label on the bottle, and then I give it to them, and they pay me directly for it. And usually they save money because we're not having to pay 2 or 3 other people in that transaction. So those tools are there to help me obviously work better, but it's also things that I didn't learn and know I could do until I had to basically become that person who's a little more diverse in my actual offerings to clients, to patients, or whatever you want to call them. So that's something to use. Other people don't realize that I actually built my own website. I've built several websites, so I do that as well. Not gonna say I enjoy it. Like, I didn't wake up and was like, yes, today I'm building a website. No, but I definitely built my own website, constantly updating it, doing stuff like that. So I do that. Our email list, I craft those emails, I send those out, all the information that's contained in them, I do that. The social media posting, like, I do a little bit of everything. And of course, again, the same conversation we had earlier about not doing everything is something that I'm okay with. And at one point I didn't feel that way. I was like, if I don't do it, it's going to get done incorrectly. So I had to learn to separate myself from that and teach people to do it the way I'd like it, and then start to hand that off. And that's a lot better use of my time than having to update a website, because some people do it better than me and probably can do it faster than me, and they can do it to my liking. And then I don't have to sit there and update a website all hours of the day. So all of that being said, I use a lot of technology sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. My fiance, of course, will tell you it's probably for worse because I stay on the phone, I stay on the computer, and she's like, "Are you gonna put it down yet?" And I'm like, "Give me 10 minutes." And then 3 hours later, I'm like, "Give me 10 minutes." So, but at the end of the day, I know that it's easier to do things, learn how to do them, than hand them off. And that's where I'm at with things. And a lot of the stuff in our practice is to the point where I'm so good at it, I feel like I can start to get other people to do it, and that's where we're headed.
Yeah, good answer, good answer, good answers. I agree with all that. I struggle with that as well, trying to do everything. Just starting to get in the habit of giving tasks off to other people, paying them for their services and stuff like that. Good. So you say you started your business in 2020 during the middle of a pandemic.
Correct.
So how did COVID impact your practice, especially when you're starting off creating a business during the pandemic?
Yeah, I tell you, when I say I don't necessarily know if my story is written by somebody, they're gonna say this made all the sense in the world. They're gonna probably be like, "What were you thinking?" Like, and I'm gonna look back and be like, "I have no idea. That probably wasn't the smartest thing," because starting a business when there's no financial certainty is really probably not the best strategy. But I think I've said it earlier. My mindset is that I can't lose if I know what my result is going to be. Right? Like in my head, I don't have that fear that it's not going to go well. If I did, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Go back to the 3 failures, right? Like, it was to the point where I was on my last thread and I still made it. So if I can make it through that, I mean, everything else is a cakewalk in my mind. And that's just us as Black people, right? Like we're so resilient. We've been through so much stuff that small things don't even phase us, and we don't even realize that we're doing things that are probably 3 or 4 times better than our competition. We just don't know how to put it together. So for me, I was much in the same thing. It was either I was going to be paralysis by analysis or I was going to do it, right? I literally knew I wanted to start my business the year before. I went to a conference, as I told you. I'm a huge advocate for going to conferences because you learn a lot of stuff. I went to a conference and I met all of these Black and brown direct primary care doctors. And literally, I said, "I'm thinking about it and I don't know if I'm gonna do it." And And they said, "You just got to do it. There's never gonna make sense. It's never gonna make sense. You just need to do it." And after I left that conference, I said to myself, "I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it next year." Mind you, the conference was in October, maybe November of 2019. And then, of course, in March of 2020, a pandemic happened. So at that point, I was like, well, I'm going to wait. And March went to April. April went to May. And you get the idea where I'm going with this. And it got to the point where I was not as happy in the practice that I was in, teaching and being a faculty member, that I was really and truthfully like, I don't need to be here. I need to move because my purpose needs to be elsewhere. And at that point, I made a decision that either I'm going to do it or I'm not. And I said, I don't have any patients, 0. I opened my practice with not one single patient. 0 patients signed up, 0 patients came with me. I literally launched and I put a message up that I'm starting my practice. I got a lot of love, but no patients. So I got a lot of likes and a lot of way to go. We're so proud of you, and 0 patients, 0 money coming in, and what? So what I had to do was I joke with a lot of my friends, and one of my best friends, my older brother, he's military, and he always says random stuff, and he doesn't realize how profound some of the stuff he says to me because I hear it differently than what he says. One of the things he says, "You better get it out the mud." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like just the most ridiculous statement out of the blue. But then the more I started listening to what he was trying to explain to me in that situation, I realized that's what I was doing. I just didn't know what it was called, right? So I started literally doing everything I could to get patients in the most respectful and honest way. It would be emailing, it would be phone calls, it would be home visits, it was networking, it was going to different places. And slowly but surely, people started seeing how I worked. And people started getting what I was doing. And people started calling and people started emailing. And before you know it, I had a panel. And that panel is one of the best things that has ever happened to me because it gave me the affirmation that I can do this. And this is meant to be. It wasn't just a dream, right? It wasn't just a hobby, right? It wasn't an expensive hobby, as a lot of people say. When you got a business and you ain't making no money, it's just an expensive hobby. so it got to the point where the bills started getting paid. Patients started calling more frequently. People started enrolling. and people started enrolling to the point where I had to raise my prices because I was doing the work at such a low rate that I had to go up on the price. And people were looking at me like, ooh, your price is too high. And it's funny because if you don't value yourself enough, other people won't. If you don't put your price where you think it should be, nobody else is going to pay you that. And I've literally had to do that with myself to where people will start to say, you are worth that much plus more. But I had to do it for me first. So my prices are slowly going up in increments. And I don't do it because I'm trying to brag or whatever, but I know how good I am. I know how good my services are. I've been told in many of occasions, you're the best doctor I've ever had. Hell, you can go look at our reviews online. You can see some of the stuff these people are writing, and I don't pay them to write that like you would think I did, right? Some of the stuff they say, I'm like, man, I look like I must have wrote that myself. But it's to the point where I feel like it's going to work so much, and I'm so convicted and so driven and so motivated to get it done that it ends up becoming where other people believe as well, where I get calls of, I need a job. Like, wait, what? Like, I never even thought somebody would call me and say that, you know? So it is a beautiful thing at this point. It really gives me more energy to wake up and be my own business owner and to have multiple businesses that I run and to not have to stress. Case in point, people may not realize that we're recording this during normal business hours, right? so I'm able to do a podcast in the middle of the day and still have all my patients taken care of, still have my bills paid, and still be able to smile and laugh and joke. It's not I'm doing this because I really have to. I'm doing this because I don't have a choice. It's me doing it to spread the word about not only what I do, but the idea that people can look at me and say, you know, this is a positive brother, but he also shows me that if you have the right mindset and you are resilient and you have the grind in you, you're going to be fine, you know? And look, I told the story about me failing on multiple occasions. I told the story about me having to leave and go and make mistakes, but I'm still here and I'm still kicking, and I'm still going. And I said it early, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And that's not because I'm trying to make it sound like what I'm doing is easy. It's just, you can do it. You have to just get started, and you just have to remember what your purpose is. And if you walk in your purpose, the rest is going to take care of itself.
That's what's up, man. Yes, I agree with that. Yes. All right. Earlier you said you mentioned that you had a nonprofit organization. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So name of our nonprofit is called Comprehensive Medical Mentoring Program, or CMMP. CMMP started in 2015 when I was a fellow at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And the purpose of the program, which used to be an 8-week program, it was a crash course in how to get into medical school. We have since grown into 2, for the most part, chapters, one in Washington, D.C., and the other in Southern Louisiana, and slowly but surely expanding. And we are, you know, as my brother says, we're getting it out the mud because we're doing the work that no one else potentially wants to do, right? There are other people who do mentoring, and I love the idea of what they do, but we try to do it in a way where we meet the students where they're at, right? We don't have to do it in the traditional, you're in a classroom, you're in a residency, you're in a clinic, you're shadowing, so you're mentoring. We're doing programming that hopefully will get the students so engaged and so intrigued into medicine that they keep going. Because what happened with me was the catalyst of, I don't want this to happen to anybody else. I don't want it to be where one person is struggling, they don't have let me call someone. So we do programming that allows students to see us outside of the classroom, see us outside of the exam room. So this week we're doing a suturing clinic in New Orleans where we literally go into the university. We're going to Dillard University this week, and we're literally basically teaching undergraduate students how to do stitches. So we call it suturing clinic. So we're basically going to show them how to do stitches because, believe it or not, if you want to do medicine, you don't get experience like that until you're a resident or a med student who's really good. So if you're an undergrad and you're not sure you want to be in medicine, and I come in, Dr. Jasper, and show you how to do stitches, all of a sudden you're a little more motivated. Like, number one, I met a doctor who looks like me. Number two, they taught me something pretty cool and I see I can do it. And number three, now I have a network of people around me to help me go. So it's not easy. And it's funny, we have one paid employee of CMMP. Everything else is volunteer. And we still have 2 chapters in 2 states, and we're close to getting a grant. And I believe, I might get in trouble for this, but I know a person who actually runs the nonprofit, me. So I'm going to say we're close to getting a $1 million grant for some of the work we're doing. And that $1 million is going to go towards helping more people of color get into the medical field, which hopefully will take more of us out of healthcare disparities, which will then, of course, build generational wealth. Like it is not a, I'm gonna go to Denzel. This is chess, not checkers, right?
Right.
Like we're not doing it. We're not doing this because it's easy. We're doing it because it's going to change the lives of people. And that nonprofit has grown based off of the strength of passion and based off of the idea that we can do better for ourselves. We don't have to depend on everybody else to give us anything. Go get it yourself. And if we get it ourselves, there shouldn't be a problem with other people following in the footsteps. And we're steadily getting more interest from people. Like I get students, it gets to the point, so I get disappointed because I can't do everything, right? Like I've had students say, we need you to come speak at our school, and the school's so many states away, I just can't get there. So we're always looking for more help within the nonprofit. You don't have to be a physician to be in the nonprofit. You don't even have to be in the healthcare field. We have lawyers, we have engineers. It's just wanting to help these students make it to the next level. And if they make it to the next level, guess what? They then become people who are going to help more students make it to the next level. And it just pays itself forward. It pays itself forward. It pays itself forward. So when you and I are old and gray and we can't get out the bed on our own, we got a bunch of doctors taking care of us that look like us. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. All right. That's what's up, man.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know anything about the nonprofit organization. That's what's up.
Yeah.
So since we have two chat, man, how you, man? Well, that's my next question. How you have the work-life balance? You know what I'm saying? Like, because you run a business, you got a nonprofit organization in 2 different states. You just got to engage. And your fiance is a physician too. So
Correct.
how do y'all work? How's your work-life balance?
Yeah, that's funny. We are definitely cut from a different cloth. Like she makes me look bad sometimes because I have the nonprofit, I have the clinic business. I actually have 2 more businesses outside of that, and she's usually the one that's over here holding it down, right? Like I'm the one that's all over the place doing 800 things on the phone all the time, and I think she does the important work, which people are going to say it sounds really cliche. She keeps me sane, right? Like she literally tells me you need to sit down and do this because you're forgetting this, that, or the other. And she actually helps to keep things balanced. Plus, she motivates me because I see her drive. She's and people, again, the 6 degrees of separation. Your wife trained my fiance in OBGYN, so it's really funny that how we're connected. But it's one of those things where she grinds just like I do. She just does it in a different way. And we complement each other because she keeps me laughing. I think I keep her laughing as well. And it gets to the point where it doesn't have, it going a little bit deeper. You've got to have a partner who wants you to succeed just as much as you want to succeed. And if I tell her what I want to do, it's not I don't know about that. It's what do you need, And that's the thing that makes it work so well for us. That work-life balance is not always perfect, right? She works a lot, I work a lot. But it's to the point where now that I own my own businesses and I'm able to do my own schedule, I have a lot more time to do what she needs. And I also have a lot more time for myself to manage things in a way where if I was working for someone else, I probably wouldn't, right? I'd have to call out sick and all this other stuff. So I think it's easier said than done. But I also think that, again, if you know your purpose and you know what your goal and your result is going to be, the rest is really and truthfully just getting it done, and we do it all the time. Like, it's so funny. I have talked to people who are so locked into what they do that they don't realize how much stuff that they do until you basically sit them down and explain to them, you've done all of this. Now, why can't you have your own business? Like, it's either you really don't want to or you just nervous, but it's really and truthfully not that you can't. I've yet to meet people who can't do it. It's just that they don't understand it. They don't want to, whatever the case may be. So for us, we figured out how to do it. You and your wife, y'all have figured out how to, like, there's a whole bunch of us that have figured out how to do it. It's just, we don't often do the same thing that we're doing now. We don't talk to each other. We don't network. Exactly. We don't say, hey, brother, I got something that I need your help with. Can you help me out? And most of the time, if you ask a Black person who knows something, how to do something, I have yet to hear somebody say, no, I'm not going to show you this, because we like helping people, right? We just like telling people how to do stuff the right way. It's just that we have a hard time swallowing our pride in doing that. And having the work-life balance is one of those things where you sometimes have to say, I need your help. I need your help to keep me from doing X, Y, and Z, or I don't know how to run this business. I don't know how to file this accounting paperwork. I don't know how to set this business up. And then from there, the rest can actually take care of itself. But if you know the purpose, the rest will be fine.
Boy, that was great. That was a great answer. That was a great answer. That's what's up. Okay. All right. So when was the moment? I love asking these next two questions. When was the moment that you realized you were going to be successful?
Okay. As ridiculous as it sounds, 5 years old. 5 years old. 5 years old. 5 years old. And I'm gonna tell you again, this goes back to the idea of your people around you. The people around you. At 5 years old, I told my mom I wanted to be a doctor. And you know what she told me? Okay, let's do it. That's all she said. And I remember the conversation like it was yesterday, because when she said it, it was almost like nothing was wrong with it, right? It wasn't no one in the family is a doctor, or you don't want to be something else, or your brother's a such and such, you want to do that, or your dad does this. It was literally okay. And ever since then, it literally just so happened that things would work out. And I have a good friend of mine, and we were having a conversation, and with the conversation, it was I don't really worry about you because you somehow always land on your feet. And I was like, I don't know if it's a good thing, because I still go through a lot to get to that point. But that's one of those things. Like, if you saw me in 5 years old, 5-year-old me, I was a horrible student, like horrible, so horrible. I'll tell a funny story. I was so bad at school, I would literally take my homework, because back then they used to give you your homework and you'll take it home and give it to your parents to sign. I used to take my homework and throw it in the trash. Like, it was just that bad. Like, I was like so bad. It was so bad. I was just throwing trash. And then the teacher called and told my mom that he's throwing his homework in the trash. And of course, I didn't. I learned a lesson that day. But the point is, I ended up having a teacher come in, and she saw something in me that no one else did. Not even my family at the time. The teacher called, and this is the funny thing. She was a white lady. Her name was Miss Livingston. I'll never forget it. Miss Livingston said, Byron is not doing poorly because he's not smart. He's doing poorly because he's not challenged. Because all I did in school was talk all day. I just talk. Most people can tell I can talk a lot. So she just started giving me more homework that was complex. And again, I told you I like puzzles, right? Like, it's a challenge to figure it out. So I just started doing it. And from 4th grade until whenever, I got straight A's. One teacher saw something and challenged me, and the rest was history, right? So at 5 years old, my mom told me I could do something. In the 4th grade, I don't know how old I was, I figured out that I could do it. And from there, it was just getting it done, right? It's just having the mindset that I'm going to be successful. And it's a rare thing sometimes, but that's just how I'm built, right? Like, so it sounds cliche, but 5 years old, right? Like, I remember that, and ever since then, I knew I was going to be a doctor. Even when I failed 3 times on step 1, I knew I was going to be a doctor. Even when I got out of medical school, I knew I was going to have my own practice. Like, and it wasn't, and guess when I figured I was going to have my own practice? 6 years old. I literally said, I'm going to be a doctor and have my own practice. Like, I literally said that. It's been something I've been thinking about for a very long time. So I'm not surprised about it. I know people will look at me and be like, you ain't know that. I mean, some people just know that you have a talent. You're good at certain things. You just know you can outdo other people. And I know that. And I'm not doing it because I'm bragging. It's just, I feel so strongly about my talent that no one can take it away from me, right? I have to continue to tell myself, because there's not going to be a bunch of people going to come behind me and tell me, yeah, you can do that. There's going to be a bunch of people who tell you can't, right? There's going to be a lot of people who hate on you. There's going to be a lot of people who don't want you to succeed. So why not tell yourself you're going to be successful? Why not tell yourself that you're going to have X, Y, and Z? And then when you do it, then what they going to say, right? What they going to say now? That's kind of how I am, right? So whenever they get to the point that they challenge me, I like puzzles. I like complex stuff. So automatically to me, it's just a challenge of trying to figure out how it works. Once I figure out how it works, the rest is history.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Miss Livingston.
Right. Shout out to Miss Livingston. Shout out to Miss Livingston, bro. I'm telling you, horrible, right? Like that trash homework was really trash, if you know what I mean, right?
All right. So let's go to the opposite side spectrum. So what was your worst mistake, and how did you bounce back and learn from that?
I would say it was just doubting myself sometimes, right? And it's not so much that it's one thing because it happens all the time. I'll give you another story. Another story. Again, it's gonna sound like I'm bragging, but I just think it's funny. I had a person reach out to me to do a speaking engagement, and I'm gonna drop a gem on some people who are listening. One of the things that I never knew was that when people ask you to do something, you do it very well, unless you really, really like the people, you should ask them to compensate you for the work you do.
Mm-hmm.
In the medical field, doctors are often asked to do everything for people and no one wants to somehow compensate us. But if you have a lawyer and you ask them to do something, a lawyer asks you to pay them, you don't bat an eyelash, right? You ask the lawyer to review your contract, you ask the lawyer to review something or speak to you about something legal, they ask you to pay them and you pay them. But when you ask a doctor to come speak at an organizational fair or something, they all of a sudden be looking at you like, wait, you want us to pay you? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good at what I do. I know I'm good at it. And one of the mistakes I made was doubting that I should ask people to compensate me for my time. So I literally said to several people in this instance, this person asked me to come speak. I wanted to ask this person, how can I actually get paid or compensated for what I'm about to do because it's not easy, right? You're asking me to come speak for an hour and a half, and for an hour and a half, you want me to give you all my medical knowledge for free. I don't think that makes sense.
No.
Right. I don't think it makes sense, but that's what people do. They will literally ask you to interview and do whatever. And if you ask them to pay you, they look at you like you're crazy. So at that point, I had to figure out how to ask. And I watched something and it stuck with me. The question is not how much you gonna pay me, it's what is the budget you have for your event? And when you frame it that way, you don't sound like the I know that I'm worth X, Y, or Z. So you need to give me X amount. It's more so framing it to figure out if they're in your budget or not. If they don't have a budget for you, then you just respectfully decline. And that's what I've tried to do, not because I feel like I'm better than anybody, but I do know I'm good at what I do. Otherwise, why would you ask me to come speak? So to the mistake that I made was doubting that I should do that. And I'll tell you why. So I asked the lady what's her budget. The lady came back and said, well, what's your rate? That was the first thing. At that point, I doubted myself again because I was like, well, how much is too much and how much is too little? So I had to go back and forth and literally try to figure it out. And I gave the lady a rate, but before the rate I gave her, I had to literally talk myself up to the rate, right? And I'm not going to say the number because I'm not stupid, but
Right.
I imagine I said, I want you to pay me this number and it's up here. But when I started, I was way down here. And I had to talk myself to get to this number to explain to myself how much I'm worth, how good I am, how much school I had been through, how much experience I have. I had to talk myself up. And I got to the number and I gave the lady the rate. And what do you think the lady said? She said, no problem. We'll give you that. A day later, she came back and said, we actually have more money in the budget. We're going to triple it.
Damn. Wow.
When I tell you, it's literally the mindset that makes us not necessarily get to that next level. It's one of those things that self-doubt is one of the biggest mistakes that we all have. And I'm no stranger to it. I'm a very confident person, but there are times where I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just real nervous about this or whatever. I think the difference between me and the next person is that eventually the nervousness goes out to, well, the only thing that's going to happen is I'm just going to fail and we're going to do something else, right? Like at that point, if I asked her what's her rate or what's her budget and she came back and said, we ain't got no money, what you think I was going to say? Okay, I'm not going to do it. But how bad would it have been for me not to do the event that I'm already not necessarily wanting to do unless I'm compensated? Like, that's the thing. Like, you have to struggle with these internal demons, if you will, and this back and forth. And once you figure out how to do it in a very, very streamlined, efficient way, the rest is really fine, right? And that's one of my mistakes. To the very long-winded answer that I constantly give is me saying, one of the mistakes I constantly make is trying to figure out how to do stuff as if the way I'm doing it is not right, as if the way I'm doing it is not good, as if the way I'm doing it is not as good as someone else. And it's not because of that, it's because we have been taught that you're not as good as whoever because you don't look like, or you don't come from, or you're not such and such. And then when I finally tell myself enough information and get myself to the right level and give myself that pep talk, I realize how much better I am than other people, but I had to do it for me first. right? I had to talk myself up to that number to then realize that I'm worth 3 times that number, right? So that's the mistake that I think I make, but I think other people make it too. And what I'm here to potentially tell people is don't let that constantly feel like that's okay. Again, it's a mistake. Mistake is made. I learn from it and I keep it moving. And that's how I think everybody else should be. It's not the mistake of this happened on this one day and it's going to define me forever. I got plenty of life to live. And if from that plenty of life to live, I'm going to keep making mistakes, but I'm going to keep growing and getting better. And from there, I think the rest is going to, again, take care of itself.
All right. Yeah, that was great. That was a great answer. That was a great answer. That was great. How you made a mistake and tripled your money. That's crazy. All right.
I kid you not, and I'm not joking when I say triple. I literally did the math. I was like, oh, that's 3 times. Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Right, exactly. What time? Look, it was like, what time did the event start? It was 6:30. And whenever she told me that they tripled my money, I was like, I'll be there at 6, right? I was like, I'll be there at 6, right? all of a sudden, that schedule got a little more free, right?
Exactly. All right. I got one more question for you. Well, 2. So, being that you're a person of color, have you ever feel that you lost any opportunities or denied because you're a person of color in your career?
I think that's a natural thing. I can't point to a concrete example where I can say 100% this is why, but I think it's a natural thing that if I'm sitting in the room and I have the best answer and yet somebody else ends up getting the opportunity or someone else takes my answer and capitalizes off of it, I don't think it has any bearing on my lack of intelligence or my lack of wherewithal or whatever you want to call it. It probably has to do with, well, if it comes from this person, it sounds better, And I feel for a lot of the Black women out there because I know they have that way worse than the Black men, in my opinion, that they can be the most compassionate, intelligent, well-rounded person in the room. But if they say something the wrong way, they all of a sudden got an attitude or they, fill in the blank. And it's just because they're not a man and then they're a Black woman. So it's a whole nother thing. But I know that experience happens. Medicine specifically. If it didn't happen, we wouldn't have a lot of healthcare disparities. We would have a lot more people of color sitting at the table, and they would have a lot more people who are in the healthcare facilities and the health education institutions making the decisions, right? The people who are getting into the schools often look like the people who are sitting at the table. And that's the best way I can say it. So what did I end up deciding to do? Instead of trying to sit at their table, I'm gonna build my own. And at that point, right, I'm gonna build my own table. And if I'm building my own table, then I can let whoever sit at it and what they're gonna say at that point. So I do feel 100% that it happened. I can't tell you, 1, 2, 3, 4 experiences, but I can tell you there's no way in my mind that in medicine, I've literally had the opportunity that I deserve just based off of the strength of my resume. And when I know there are people who are others, if you will, and they are absolutely getting some of the same thing, if not more, and they've done less.
Agreed, 100%. That's across any field.
Right, exactly.
All right. So this is my last question. So, what is the future you pick for your organizations? All your multiple businesses, your nonprofit. What is your future?
Let me see the short version. So I would say growth is definitely one of the things. Trying to get to the point where we are not only thriving, we're employing other people of color. We're teaching them the ropes. We're giving them the opportunity to be themselves. And that sounds really funny when you say that, because another conversation I had with somebody is, when you go to work, can you wear your hair the way you're supposed to, quote unquote? And I said, well, I can wear whatever I want, right? Like I'm the boss. I can wear. Can you do that? And she responded and said, no. She was like, I can't do that in front of the other people because they're going to think of me and da da da. So we had a whole conversation about being your own self in your own organization is a lot better. So in mine, I think that's another thing that we're going to do. We're going to try to give people the opportunity to come in and be yourself and still succeed and get the credit you deserve. So in all the organizations that I'm building, that is, those are the two things I would say are probably most important. It's growth, sustainable growth, right? Not just growing just to say you grow and then it all crumbles, but growth and then letting people be themselves and be themselves in a way where they can thrive and not have to stress, right? You can come to work and be you, and you know you're still going to be successful, because I feel like it takes a lot of stress off of you. It adds life to your life, if that makes sense, because you're not stressed all the time. You're not walking around with the nervousness of what about this and I'm gonna lose my job if I do this, that sort of thing. So those are the things that I'm hoping and truly believe are going to happen. And notice I didn't say anything about money, right? I didn't say anything about increased revenue, right? I feel like the other things are going to come and the rest is going to take care of itself, because if you take care of people, people are going to take care of you. But you have to do it in a certain way where it's authentic, it's genuine, and it's timeless. And if you do it well, everybody else is going to do the exact same for you, in my opinion.
All right, man, that was a great interview, man. You asked all the questions perfectly. I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Yeah.
Please let the people know where they can follow you at. Give me your website, and I also post it while you're giving it to them.
Yeah. So I am a little bit all over the place. So the the Instagram handle that I use is Dr. B Jasper, or DRB Jasper. DRBJASPER. My primary care practice Instagram is at BYJA Clinic, BYJA Clinic, BYJA, beyond just another clinic, as most people should be able to see with the logo. For our nonprofit, we have Instagram as well. It is at cmmp med. And we also have Facebook as well. So Facebook is at BYJA Clinic. And we also have Facebook for CMMP, and it's the same thing at CMMP Med. And we have a website, www.byja.org, for our primary care practice as well.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, man. That was a great interview. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, brother.
Thank you for all your comments and statements. Thank you for being a blessing to our community, giving great medical experience to all our people who deserve it. All right, all my listeners, followers, please remember, listen, follow, share, like this. This is why I created a platform, so people like him exist in our area. So if you need medical healthcare provider, he's one of the best right here, Dr. Jasper. So thank you for coming on the show. That's all we have for today. Peace. We out.